What I realized was that I was arguing with these people. Anything other than, yes, I'll send you information, literally is an argument. And as we know from How to Win Friends and Influence People, you can never win an argument. And so I realized that what I had to do was just basically agree with him. And something I write in my book called aggressively agree. I would love to send you some information. And then when I would do that, it would be silence on the phone. Nobody ever wants to send information. I'm doing the opposite of everybody else, right? Nobody wants this information. It throws them off. And that's kind of what we're talking about, throw them off. And in that situation, you can take control. And I call it leading the witness.
Welcome to the Modern Selling Podcast, where we help the entire sales community to create more sales conversations with today's modern buyer. This includes anyone from entrepreneurs and business owners to sales reps and sales leaders. Each episode, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, connect, and nurture your relationships with your buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., your host, and you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast, and I've got with me Mr. David Walter. Now, some of you may have heard of him, some of you may not, but I know who he is. He is the author of the Million Dollar Rebuttal. Cold calling is not a numbers game. That's what he talks about. Cold calling is not a numbers game. So, as you know, on the Modern Selling Podcast, we generally have not spent time on phone calling, cold calling, calling at all, because to me, in my mind, that's not modern selling. That's just basic selling. That's getting back to the good old basics of what you and I both grew up on. But I decided to have a couple of shows. As you know, we had another individual, Joe Peachy, on the podcast as well, talking about cold calling. So I've got some podcasts that are going back to back, and I'm excited to be able to have this content for all of you guys. So, Mr. David Walter, welcome to the show, my friend.
I'm excited. I finally made it on your podcast, telling stories. I just watched that one, and I was like, I love it. Leave a cliffhanger.
With Stu Heinecke?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My boy Stu. Yeah. He's a great guy. It was a good podcast. He gave us something on his podcast about something nobody would know about him that I was like, whoa, what, where did this come from? So if y'all didn't listen to that show, go back and find the Stu Heinecke
I gotta go watch that one all over again because I must.
Yeah. He was tell us something nobody knows about you, and he talked about who his wife was. So
I know the answer already.
Yeah. So that one kind of took me by surprise on that one.
Tell everybody if that was true for me.
I love it. So do me a favor, David, just give a little background about yourself. We know that, you wrote the book, Million Dollar Rebuttal, but give me a little background about your sales history. We've got sales folks. We've got sales leaders that are listening in. Talk a little bit about yourself.
I sold encyclopedias. It was
back to the old days.
One of my last calls, ironically, I did a few. One of my last calls, I didn't have the books yet, so I brought out the whole map they gave you at the time to show you a picture of the books, And she was like, the internet's taken off. What do you think is going to be, they're going to need encyclopedias now that the internet's here? And I was like, I think you're right. I mean, it was one of those things where I walked out there and never sold another encyclopedia. I was like, yeah, this is a dead business.
Yeah.
So that was like early selling. But I sold, I worked for Jay Riggins in high school, and I sold there, and I was the top salesman in like the entire country. I sold more. And my theory, actually, we're talking about cold calling. We could talk about this, but I have a belief that when you're super successful at cold calling, you're selling. It takes a salesman to do that. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I actually believe, that's one thing about the listeners here, is that I don't believe that you should be hiring what they call SDRs or these low-level people to make cold calls. I think salespeople should be making them. We just have to make cold calling easier for them. And we'll talk about that. But I've sold managed services, and I've actually done a lot of sales, and that's how I finally, when I did cold calling, I was like, I think I'm a salesman.
I gotcha. And so how long ago did you publish the book?
I started writing it about 5 years ago. I think 2 years ago I published the ebook. Okay. And then last year I published the print copy.
Okay.
And then somewhere in there I did the audio version of the book.
Fantastic.
But it took me a long time to not write the book, but try to find somebody to publish it, figure out how I'm going to publish it. People took my money, $10,000 here. We're going to make your book a #1 bestseller. All these promises out there. It's pretty sketchy out there for authors that don't know the path.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a whole separate podcast right there in terms of book publishing. So tried and true sales guy at heart, started out with encyclopedias, obviously went into B2B sales and wrote a book within the last 2 years, published it in the hard copy this past year. And now here we are. So do me a favor, tell us something nobody would know about you, even if they were looking at your social profiles.
Nobody would know that I'm shy.
What?
I'm a nerd, and I was bullied terribly when I was in school.
Oh, man.
Terribly bullied, and it wasn't until high school somebody was bullying me, and I just did a little karate move. I never studied karate. I did a drop sweep kick. I knocked the guy down, and I just started fighting with him, beat him up, and then suddenly I was no longer a nerd and no longer bullied. It's like solved all those problems.
Right. So you turn into Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid.
I don't know how. This is a subconscious mind thing. We'll get into that, right?
Yeah. Well, it was probably around the Karate Kid time frame.
You just don't know you know what you know.
Exactly. A little wax on, a little wax off. I don't know if all of our listeners will know what that reference is, but I know you know what that reference is.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are the good old days. So, wow. Okay. So bullied in school. Well, that's unfortunate. That's actually the first time someone's mentioned that we got bullied in school. And it wasn't until high school that you figured out how to solve that particular problem. I'm sorry that happened. That is actually a growing trend and a growing problem that's happening in school systems a lot.
Oh, absolutely. But I feel like it helped shape who I am. The way I approach, the way I am, because one thing is the whole idea of salespeople being these egotistical, pushy, kind of thing. I'm the complete opposite. I'm trying to be more humble and listen, and I'm like a teacher, try to help people in a very humble way. And that's actually more of what a real salesman is, in my opinion. It's like actors. People think actors act. No, actors don't act. They actually feel real feelings. Yeah. Salespeople don't sell. Well, that's my opinion.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about cold calling. I think there's a backstory around how you started making cold calls, if I'm not mistaken. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was working for my father out of high school, and I was helping him. This is around the time when I was helping him make all this money, running ads in the newspaper and selling all that stuff. And he went bankrupt, completely bankrupt for the first time in a long time. And so I was without a job. And I decided, I had done cold calling in college, and I decided that I would take a job working for a company called CIS, which was a PEO, like Insperity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, I worked at an MBNA America Bank when I was in high school, and did a lot of cold calling. I was taking 40 credit cards a night there. So I was really good. But this was B2B calling. I never really had called businesses. I was nervous about that. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be interrupting these guys.
Right.
They're not going to want to talk to me. And so I took this job, and the commission structure was like unbelievable. It was like, they always
too good to be true.
Exactly. Oh, I'm gonna get rich.
$1 million.
They always make it sound too good to be true. So when I got there, to make that commission, you'd have to be setting, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 appointments a day. And the reality when I got there is they would train you by letting you sit with all the employees that were making calls and listen to them. They all made 2 appointments. That was it. And one guy literally had a bell. He's got his second appointment, and he rang that bell. And that was their limit. And so I was pretty nervous. Like, how am I going to make, because I told you they went bankrupt. And so I was trying to make a lot of money so I could buy land in the country and build a house for us. My parents had moved into my apartment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty daunting time. And I'm like, I had a lot of pressure on me. I had to make more money. Out of the gate, before I even got on the phone, I knew that I was going to have to do better than what they were doing.
Right.
And that's why I picked up, they had this library, and I saw Zig Ziglar's book, See You at the Top, pulled it out, read it. But what's interesting is I had read Tony Robbins' book and other books about the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
I'd never taken action, right? And reading and not taking action doesn't help you. But I read his book. It resonated with me, the idea of looking in the mirror and claiming your qualities. I read Think and Grow Rich too, but that resonated with me. And so I just started doing it. Mario, every day I would look up, I'd get up in the morning and say, I'm going to set 15 appointments. Because I figured I set that because that's what would trigger all the massive commissions and everything if I set 15. And I might set 15 appointments a day. And I did that every single day. And eventually I did set 15 appointments. And I did that every single day for 6 months. I set over 1,800 appointments.
Wow.
And, at the time I was just focused on making money. I didn't realize that I had changed the very idea of cold call. Burned it down and built it up as a whole new concept. It wasn't until years later I really had wanted to write a book, and I started thinking about different things I could write about. I was like, wait a minute, I should write about this.
Right. One of the things you said, you just glossed over it, and I want the listeners to really rewind and think about this, what you said. You realize when you're looking at the comp plan that if you made 15 appointments per day, you'd make the most amount of money. And so a lot of us don't back into our compensation plan. We look at our compensation plan and we're like, okay, I got to be able to hit a couple deals. They think about immediately, I got to close X number of deals to be able to make that happen. But if we take a step back and we say, well, to get those deals, we have to do what, and what, right? Like to be able to get to those deals. Obviously, one of them is you got to have conversations. You got to set appointments. So it's interesting that you looked at the compensation plan. To be able to hit those numbers, you had to be able to identify how many appointments a day you needed to book. And you were booking 15 appointments per day. You're dialing and smiling and dialing and finding those people. That's a lot of conversations.
I wasn't. We'll talk about that. I was very calm.
That's the catch right here. Okay.
I was very calm and slow.
Interesting. All right. What were any of the obstacles you faced when trying to set 15 appointments per day?
Well, the whole thing was an obstacle, right? Literally what happened is my subconscious mind, when I set that goal, my subconscious mind started figuring out all the steps like you're talking about that I would have to go through. Literally, I actually visioned, I was like, okay, anything's possible, right? That was my attitude. And, every time somebody sets a record, somebody else breaks it. So why not skip ahead to the future when we've broken it 10 times and just do that the first time? And I just thought about it with the principles of talking to a person. I started with the end in mind and the idea that if I start with yes at the end, what would I have to say to get every person back to that yes? So you're a yes starting out. When I first make the call, I already have you as a yes. And if I could say the right things in order and end with a yes. And what happened was the obstacle you're talking about is I literally was able to get 40 people, 40 decision makers to talk to me or get through gatekeepers and get them on the phone every single day consistently. And I hadn't set all the appointments yet. This was in that process of figuring it all out. And I got frustrated because literally it was a 2-week period of time where I literally stopped making appointments. And I was just making these contacts, but I was getting every contact to go all the way through the whole presentation, all the way to the end where they would then tell me to send information. And it was send information, one after another, send information for 2 weeks, every call. And at the end of 2 weeks, I talk about my book. I had a headset back then. I just got up and threw my headset down, and I was frustrated because I felt like I was so close to breaking through, but this obstacle. And I was, at that time, I still smoked, and I was on my smoking break. Think about it, and I stopped. I was like, wait a minute. Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe by knowing exactly what people are going to say to me or what they're going to do every time, it's like knowing the enemy's game plan. And so I realized is that if I knew I had a plan that always drove people every time to ask me for send information, all I needed to do was come up with the ultimate send information rebuttal, right? And then suddenly I would have this massive amount of leads, this huge harvest. And so that's what I did. I started meditating on the best way to do it. And that's when we were talking before, when I realized my mistake, and it's the mistake that a lot of salespeople make. When somebody asks them for information, we naturally don't want to give that information to the people, right? Because it's not going to help us. We're going to send it. It's going to waste time.
Well, they'll never read it.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's what my experience is send me information means I want to get off the phone and I don't want to talk to you anymore. So what do you do?
Well, what I realized was that I was arguing with these people. Anything other than, yes, I'll send you information, literally is an argument. Now, maybe you're not screaming, right?
Of course.
But you're arguing with them. And as we know from How to Win Friends and Influence People, you can never win an argument. And so I realized that what I had to do was just basically agree with them. And agree with them, something I write in my book called aggressively agree.
Okay.
Not just like, yeah, I'll send you information, but I would love to send you some information. And then when I would do that, it would be silence on the phone.
Okay.
Because nobody ever wants to send information. I'm doing the opposite of everybody else, right? Nobody wants to send information. They have their little script they have ended at that point. They didn't have any more script.
Right. Yeah. That was your hallelujah. And they gave it to me. You're like, yes, I'd be happy to. That's wonderful. And then be like, whoa, this guy's really excited to send me information. And then what?
They had no idea what they wanted. So then what I could do is, I don't want to go too much in this because this is literally the $1 million rebuttal, but I'll give you a little bit about it. Because basically what you can do at that point is, we're talking about this the other day. My son was telling me he's in Denver visiting, and he's like, when he's gotten in fights, when somebody's coming approaching him to fight him, he would say, like, you want to date me, or just different things that are very weird. And people are like, what? It throws them off. And that's kind of what we're talking about, throw them off. And in that situation, you can take control. And I call it leading the witness. I can start asking questions that I know they're going to give me the right response, and just lead them right into a trap. It's literally a funnel. So once they ask me, I'm like, well, what kind of information would you like? Now they have to think even more, and they just mentioned, you want testimonials? You want a brochure? What do you want? And then I do the worst thing, salespeople listening right now are going to be like, stop, no. Do you want the price? You never want to do that on a sales call, right?
Generally not. You
don't want to talk price, but I do that, and what that does is that sucks them in, right? Because it's like throwing that red meat bait. They go for it. What prospect wouldn't want to hear the price before they ever have to deal with the salesman?
When someone says, can you send me information? You're saying, well, what information would you like? And
Exactly.
You're asking them, do you want the price? Or are you saying, like, what information would you like? Would you like customer testimonials? Would you like product pages? Would you like a blog? Would you like a webinar? Would you like our pricing information? Like, do you go through a series of items?
Pause. I'm like, would you like a webinar? Would you like the price?
Uh-huh.
Because I know when I say that, because I want to get yeses from them, right? But not a yes like, is the sky blue? Not yeses like, if you're drowning, I'll throw you a lifeline. Would you pick it up? Then buy more stock from me. I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about actual agreement on real concepts, right?
Okay.
When you get them agreeing to things that are real, yes, I want. They're sucked into that call, right? I've got them, and it's them. It's not me making them do it. It's putting bait out that they want.
So
what kind of bait can I put out that they want? And literally, I won't go into any more details, but what I'm doing is I essentially give them something, and then I talk them out of it by asking questions. I ask them another questions. It's basically like, so do you really want the price? I offered it, right? But I don't think you really want the price. And so basically what I do is I reason with them, which is what salespeople do. The whole idea of sales is people are short-sighted, and they don't see the long-term benefit or the long-term consequences of taking actions. And that's really what we do, is we just say, if you take this course of action, like Zig Ziglar talks about the copy machines or the Swin bicycle, right? You're literally going to be making this mistake, and it's going to cost you more. And if you go this way, and so I literally just talk them out of it with their permission. And at the end, I'm like, so I don't think you want the price, do you? Like, well, no. So ultimately we lead up to, it sounds to me like you'd rather have a sales rep come out there. And they're like, yeah, I think I'd rather have a sales rep come out there.
I guess what I'm confused at, David, is, and help me walk me through this. Like, for our listeners who are listening in right now, I was following you up to, what would you like? A blog, a webinar, product material, right? Or the price. What are some of the normal answers that you might get? Sure, send me all of it. And then what do you do?
I basically reason with them, and I tell them I'm not sure that you want it. And I go into this logical way of reasoning with them and ask them questions like, why wouldn't they want the price? I mean, that is my $1 million rebuttal. The points I want to cover were that it's not a numbers game. I think that's going to help people more, or prospects you can sell more to prospects that don't have a need. But literally what we're into is the $1 million rebuttal. This is the creme de la creme. It's what helped me sell the appointments, but without all the other steps, it's useless. In other words, you literally have to walk up through all the steps to get to that last point, and then you can apply that $1 million rebuttal. But if you can't even get prospects on the phone, if you can't get through gatekeepers, they won't help anybody. The $1 million rebuttal is starting with agreeing with the prospect. In other words, that's the first aha moment, right? You don't argue with them. you want to, you're not going to lie to them. Literally, I used to have all these brochures sitting there stacked up. So if somebody got, I offered to send information, I was prepared to send it, right? But I didn't want to send it. So I tried to, so basically it's like, let's put a pin in this for a second. Yes, I'll send it to you, right? But let's put a pin in that. Do you really want it? And then basically what you were just saying about why don't we want it? Why don't we want to send it to them? Is now rephrased into why you may not want me to send information. But now they're listening to us because we've agreed with them, right? In the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he says you have to seek to understand first to be understood. So by letting them know we understand that they want information, we take the entire obstacle of the objection completely off the table, right? Mm-hmm. Now we're talking, it's like instead of me being on this side of the screen, it's like I'm morphing, I'm on your side of the screen, I got my arm around you, and I'm like, so Mario, why wouldn't you want someone to send information?
Gotcha. So this is more of the psychological thinking behind, yes, I'm happy to send you information. What would you like? Do you really want this information? Like, are you really going to read this information?
But it works better after you've agreed completely to send it.
Well, yeah. Yes, I'll absolutely be happy. So something like this. Yes, I'll absolutely be happy to send that to you, David. No problem at all. But I guess my question is do you really want that information? Their guard is no longer up because you said you'll send it to them. But the question is do I really want more information to read?
And I would look, I got a brochure right here.
And that's without knowing. That's without knowing what it is that this is about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what I do is there's like, without going into detail, like I'll give you the bones of it, but without wrapping it with the meat. There are several issues that comes with sending out information. Are they going to read it? What price could I possibly give them anyway? Am I even in a situation to give them a price? And if I could give them a price, would it even help them? Because of different situations, right? And so I ask these questions, and then do they really want to just get a price? One of the things I tell people is, do you get, if I had the cheapest price right now, but we were a bunch of jerks, would you want to do business with us? So it goes through an entire psychological step through the process until the outcome is we've eliminated every possibility except maybe having a rep come out and meet with them. It's only
I guess the thing, though, is as a buyer, I have no desire to waste my time or their time. So I'm not going to read more information that I don't even know what it is that I'm asking for them to send.
Exactly.
Right? Yes, I've said, hey, can you just send me some information on that? That is absolutely my way to be able to just get them off the phone and to get them to send me something. And if I happen to have time, I might open it and I might peek at it. That's my way as a buyer. But the reality is I have no interest in reading anything about that because I don't even know if it's even going to be of value to me. And that's probably one of the biggest problems that I see with most sellers who are calling me is that they have no idea how to articulate the business problem that they are solving that I can then say, yes, I have this problem. Now, I think you have some perspective on whether or not you have to have a problem in order for you to be able to sell something. And we might be on completely polar opposite sides here, but I want to hear your perspective. And when making that call, talk a little bit about that. Do you have to have a problem in order for you to be able to sell something?
Just like you said, let's think with the end in mind, right? Let's go backwards.
Okay.
If I'm going to set more appointments, how would I do that? So everybody else is setting 2 a day. Question is, why are they only setting 2 a day? Mm-hmm. Now, have you made cold calls before?
Me? Oh, absolutely. That's the start of my career out. Yeah.
So what would you say 90% of prospects say when you call about any service or whatever you call them, you get them on the phone? What's something they roll off their tongue really quickly after you get them on the phone? What would they say?
Who is this and what do you have?
Well, I mean, after that. You pitch. You start to tell them what you do. Do they say they're not interested?
Oh, maybe. I'm just trying to think of what I do when sellers call me.
Hey, I'm happy with what I have.
Okay.
We're all set.
Sure, that's true.
In fact, very rarely do people say, I'm not interested. That's the rare guy that woke up on the wrong side of the bed. People usually are pretty cordial. And even when they say that, they don't hang up. They just say, I'm happy with what I have. You still have control of the conversation, right? So think about it. The people that were setting 2 a day, what they were doing is calling and calling and calling and calling to find the 1 or 2 people that actually had a need.
Okay.
Was I going to find 13 more people a day that they couldn't find that had a need? Was that possible? When we know the reality is that nearly 80% of the people we called every day would say that they're happy with what they have.
Sure. Okay.
You understand those two
Absolutely.
things?
Yeah, I'm tracking.
So to set more appointments, the only way possible would be to try to set more appointments with people that said they're happy with what they have. It's the only
Fair.
way to
Okay.
do it. Now we'll talk about what question that raises for the salesperson, right? But first, is it possible, and why would it be possible? And so in life, just a few years ago, I read The Power of Habit, and in The Power of Habit, he talks about the story of Febreze. Have you read it?
I have not. No.
Okay, it's a great book. A lot of good stories in there, and it's kind of, well, we won't go into details, but the story in Febreze. I was reading that. We all use Febreze. I use it. I don't know if you have it, but in the audience, I'm sure a lot of them use Febreze.
Yeah.
Successful product. But in the story, he relates how the initial product launch failed miserably. And what happened is they launched the product sort of like most business people think. They're here to solve a problem, right?
Okay.
You mentioned at the outset, you got to find out what the problem is. And that's what most people think. So they did that. They launched how to get out your odors. Basically, they did product placement. They sent out samples. It was a huge marketing launch. It failed. People that they gave samples to didn't reorder. People didn't buy it on the shelves. This is a complete failure. So they sent out the PhDs to figure out what the problem was. And on one call, one of the last calls they made, the woman that they were going to interview opened the door, and the smell of cat smells overwhelmed these researchers. I mean, we're talking about just something repugnant.
Wretched. Yeah.
Yes.
I've smelled it before.
Rancid is the word I would use, rancid. But they held their nose. They went in for the meeting. And so they're talking to this lady. Smell of cat odors, urine, feces in the air. And they started asking her questions. Why did she buy the Febreze? She said, for the cat smells. Had she used Febreze? She said she used it one time. And they said, why? She said, for the cat smells. And then they asked her the pivotal question. They said, do you smell the cat smells now? She said, no. People did not know they had smells in their homes.
Sure.
That was a massive failure of the Febreze launch. So what they had to do is they repackaged and redid their whole marketing, not for you to get a smell out of your home that you can't smell, but to prevent odors. Now they have people spritzing all over the place, preventing odors, right? But how that transcends to what we're talking about, how that relates, is that when I read it, I realized that most businesses don't know they have a need. They can't smell their needs because they get used to them. The issues, the slow computer, all the different things that happen, that becomes the normal, right?
Okay.
This is just normal. So they don't know they have a need. And that was the justification. That was my understanding that I could set more appointments with people that didn't know they have a need. And so that's what I did, that whole approach. Because without it, see, cold calling's easy, right? But it's hard if you're trying to find a need. That is the whole call for hundreds and hundreds of hours, day in, day out, and get one or two leads. That's the hard way to do it. But this way you can set more appointments than you can imagine. Unbelievable more appointments.
How do you do that? You call me, you're selling whatever it is you're selling, and I say, no, thanks, I'm really not interested. Or I don't have a need. Everything's working fine. Then what? Yeah. What do you say?
Well, the secret all through my book is that you have to agree with people. See, when there's an argument, and I used to have reps that worked for me when I ran my call center. They'll be like, how can I agree with somebody if they're not interested? It's like, how's that possible? If they don't want to meet with me, how can I agree with them? But the way you do it is you agree with their perspective. In other words, Mario, if I lived the life you lived and walked in your shoes, you know what? I would feel the same way you do today. And what you're doing is unarming them and using the power of the 7 habits of highly effective people, the power of understanding. The power of understanding is so powerful, we don't think about it. If I could get somebody on the phone and talk to me for a minute and then get them to tell me what they have and they give me just little objections, if I made an attempt to really understand that person, all the obstacles fall away. The more I try to understand them, then it flips. And suddenly they're like, well, tell me something about what you have.
Walk me through that then, David. I don't have a need or I'm not interested. You're going to agree with me. How? What are you going to say? What do you say?
First of all, I called you, Mario. You were sitting there. You weren't expecting the call. So I know you've got something in place and you just insert whatever you sell. I know you've got a copier salesman that you're happy with. He delivers what he promised to you. You probably went on a due diligence search, looked at it, took a bunch of bids, selected the best one. You are completely I call that aggressively agreeing. Okay. I take what he says and I go even further than him and looking at a situation and telling him how much I know that he is truly happy and not looking to change.
Right.
And so what we're talking about, the key is the message that I'm looking for is what I'm looking for, Mario, is open-minded people. I don't set appointments with people who are happy with what they have. A subset of those people are open-minded.
Sure.
And so if I can get a person on the phone to tell me what their obstacle is, and then I can agree with them and see it from their perspective, right? And then get that camaraderie. They understand, they know I feel their pain, and they know that I'm not just some sleazy salesman trying to push something down their throat. I'm actually trying to understand them and see it from their perspective. Then once I get to that point, if I'm just reasonable with them and I'm like, hey, I'm sure you're happy, but there might be something better out there, right? That's possible. Then things change. Just because you're happy today doesn't mean that you'll be happy tomorrow. Your company could outgrow you. You could outgrow your company. Things change in the future. And so it all becomes about the future. Because you can get anybody to agree to nearly anything in the future, but not today. Today I'm happy. What about 2 months from now? That's the whole deal with the devil, right?
Yeah.
He makes the deal with the devil because it's years away, but today you get all the benefits. And so by using that principle, you can almost write your own ticket of any amount of leads you want if you use the principles that I have. It's all about making that target bigger. And you open it up, you open your mind up to the possibility that you can set more appointments with people that are happy with what they have. And you find a subset of that of people who are open-minded. Once you find those people, if you have an innovative product and you know the right way to pitch this idea as keeping your options open, let me tell you a story. I think the story will really open your eyes and the listeners' eyes to what I'm talking about. A lot of the cold calling I did when I had my own company was for IT companies. But again, this works for anybody. And in the book, it doesn't have any scripts that are all just for tech, right? These are scripts for anybody. And I get a lot of my compliments and reviews from people in many industries. But I was calling, and this was, I want to say like 20 years ago in the tech industry, when most companies that offered tech support did it on a per hour basis. And it was a break fix concept. Like your plumber or any service, when it broke, you call an IT company out, they would come fix it.
Right.
This is SATA Systems, Tony Safian out in California. He was working on an idea of being a proactive service, kind of like interesting, Febreze became proactive, right? That's a key component of what we're talking about is becoming a proactive, gives you something to sell. It gives you a unique perspective. So he was and I called him because I was wanting to work for a company that was proactive and didn't do it by the hour. And we sort of had a meeting of the minds. And of course, he understood this concept of setting appointments with people that are happy with what they have, right? That's rare. It was a rare opportunity that we both met. So I was calling this company, this law firm in Los Angeles. And of course, when I got on the phone with the office manager, she said what we would all expect. I'm happy with what we have.
What I've got. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. What was interesting is that she actually told me that repetitively all through the call. Now, think about that. She did get in a call with me. She did tell me what she had, explain the relationship, right? So I got her in a conversation, right? What I was pitching, though, was that flat fee, that idea of not waiting for it to break, but then giving you unlimited service for a flat rate. And it was a new idea. And that's what got her to listen. Her curiosity is what we're using. Drama, curiosity, all these powerful principles from How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so she was curious, she listened, so really what's happening, Mario, is you're talking to somebody on the phone, they have two minds. There's that curious, open-minded side of them, and there's that fear-based, I don't want to change part of them. And I'm literally going in and I'm tying up that other part of their brain and trying to let loose the side of their brain that's curious and open-minded. But I was having a conversation with one person, but it was like, I'm happy with what we have. We're not looking to change. Tell me more about this flat fee concept. I'm happy with what I have. How does that work? How would it work in this situation? You follow what I'm saying? It's literally 2 conversations.
Right.
My book, I call it speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You literally have to have 2 conversations with that person. Talk to this person, say, I know you're happy, you're not looking to change. But at the same time, build up the excitement and the coolness and the benefits of what it can have over here. You're literally doing both things at the same time. And so she was curious, but at the end, she was adamant that she was not going to change. And what I was able to do was I approached her like this. I said, look, I know you're happy. You're not looking to change, but you're curious. You told me you didn't believe. And that belief was real, that a company wouldn't even offer such a thing. Because at that time, when I would call around to find somebody that would do it, people would be like, how could we offer a flat fee for it? It's impossible, right? So that was legitimate doubt. So I told her, I said, look, you're doubting that a real company actually offers this. I know you're not going to change, but let me, and I sell based on the rep, right? Let me get Tony. Tony's the owner. He's on all these boards. He's a super nice guy. He's not a salesman. He just comes out and presents. You know, he actually gives people the proposal in the first meeting, if you can believe that or not. So she's like, okay. Her parting words were, Mario, okay, but remember to tell Tony,
I'm not ready to buy. I'm not going to buy.
We're completely happy, right? Now, if you gave that lead to any salesman in your audience right now, would they possibly want it?
Generally not. No.
No.
They'd be like, why did you book this appointment?
I don't want that.
Yeah, why did you book this appointment?
Where's the pain? Where's the need? I don't see any need here. Anyway, so Tony didn't feel that way. He loved to get those appointments. Went out there, did the presentation, everything, and then later he called me and asked me to make a follow-up call to find out what happened. So I called her back, and I'm like, okay, this is David. We talked a few weeks ago, and I set an appointment with Tony from saying, oh, yeah. Did Tony come out there on time? Yes. Did he tell you what I told you? You know, did he actually talk about a flat fee? Was I honest with you? Yes. Did you believe that he's a real company that could offer that? Yes. You know, all these questions, right? And then she stopped me and she says, I only have really one question at this point.
Where do I sign?
When to switch?
Yeah.
And she switched. 2 weeks later, she switched. She was completely happy with what she had. So can you tell people they're completely happy? Yes, you can. In fact, Tony today he doesn't like me to say this, but near $100 million company. Save Systems is all over the United States offices. They are in Canada. They deal with the government. He deals directly with Google, literally directly with Google. He deals directly. He was the first person to roll out the Google apps and all the Google appliances and all that stuff. So this is not a nobody. This is a somebody that ran with this concept, and it's sort of like the secret to his success.
Interesting. So, and we only have just 2 more minutes here on the podcast, but your point is you can sell to somebody who may not have the need because they don't know
exactly
that they have the need. And so our job is to become effective listeners that allows us to be able to acknowledge someone when they say, I don't, I won't, I can't, it's not, right? Acknowledge that and turn that into a conversation that would allow.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I hate salespeople too, you know.
So David, if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way? Is it Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. My phone number, my cell number is on LinkedIn. If they want to call me, they can. Follow me.
We'll make sure we put your LinkedIn URL into the show notes. But if you're looking for David Walter, when you connect with him, make sure you say you heard him on the Modern Selling podcast. And for the $1 Million Rebuttal, how do they get a copy of that?
They can get a free copy, actually, if they pay shipping and handling, but they get all these bonuses. It's Get Book Offer. It's getbookoffer.com.
Getbookoffer.com. All right.
Getbookoffer.com. Yeah. So I bought a copy for everybody. They just have to tell me where to ship it, and then I'll send it out.
Perfect. If you want a copy, go to getbookoffer.com and pay for the shipping and handling. And last thing, David, before we go, your all-time favorite movie, what is it?
Back to the Future.
Number 1, 2, or
Number 1.
3? Number one.
Because remember what I told you, that the thing people don't know about me is I was bullied.
Yeah.
Remember that? Remember they beat the bully?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So he was my hero. And I love time travel too.
I love it. Back to the Future. Hopefully everybody listening in to the podcast knows Back to the Future. If you've never seen Back to the Future, well, you need to go Back to the Future.
It's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. They got
you
all
gotta
three.
watch it. You gotta watch it.
I just watched it with my daughter, and she had never seen it. We watched all three last weekend.
That one and The Goonies. That was one of my favorites as well. But any case, David, great having you on the show. For those of you that want to connect,
I enjoyed it.
For those of you that want to connect with David, make sure you reach out and tell him you heard him on the Modern Selling Podcast, and great tips on cold calling. And for all of you listening in right now, don't turn that dial. Listen to this important message. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a rating and review on iTunes. I would appreciate it. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to themodernsellingpodcast.com. Hey, since you'll be on our site, be sure to check out our Modern Marketing Engine podcast, hosted by my co-founder and CMO, Bernie Borges. Thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.